Good afternoon. Sister Constance Phelps is a sister of charity of Leavenworth, Kansas, in the United States, serving as the community director. She has spent most of her professional life in higher education. As a professor and college administrator, her experiences prepared her for consulting, facilitation, and leadership roles in a variety of settings. She currently serves as one of the 2 United States delegates for the Union of International Superiors General, UISG, Constellation 3. So she's no stranger to Rome. Sister Constance held a leadership term in the collaborative presidency also of LCWR, the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, during which she was involved in launching the Women and Spirit exhibit. And perhaps some of you know about it. It was a contribution of all the women religious in the history of the United States. She is a trained sociologist with certification in higher education, administration, spirituality, leadership, and facilitation. For that reason, she has facilitated chapters, gatherings, retreats in the United States, and she also conducted research in Ghana, West Africa. I am honored to introduce Sister Constance, who is also the Vice President of the Sisters of Charity Federation Board in the United States and North America, where I serve as Executive Director. She has been a mentor and a friend over many years, and today, each of us will have an opportunity to share her wisdom, her experiences, and her passion of living the Vincentian charism. Please join me in welcoming Sister Constance.
Good afternoon. The first thing I'm going to do is ask you to do something, and that is to look in your folders and pull out this sheet. We don't need it till the end. You don't need to read it. Turn it on the back. Thank you. Can you find it? Good. Sister, I said not to read it now. This afternoon, I will share with you some thoughts on weaving our web an imaginative challenge for the future. But I begin our time together with a prayerful reflection entitled, She Weaves the World. I invite you to sit back, take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, that's what that means. As the music moves you to do so, just exhale and relax and listen. We gather with a traditional chant from the Native American Apache tribe.
Your way, your way away, your way higher, your way higher, your way, hey ya, hey yo, hey ya, hey yo, hey yo, hey ya, hey yo, your way high. Your way, your way away, your way higher, your way higher, your way, hey ya, hey yo, hey ya, hey yo, hey yo, hey ya, hey yo, your way high.
The web of creation is spun and woven by the great mother spider woman. Our native forebears named her Spider Woman, bringing into being all of life out of the stuff of herself. Spider Woman was the first to create designs and to teach native peoples how to weave. Every design she created held her spirit in it, and every design contained a flaw, so her spirit could find its way out and be free. There is something we by nature understand about the deep significance of all web images, which confirms in us the truth that in God, and with the earth, we all indeed are one. The prayer of Jesus is a strikingly weaver's prayer, whereby this artisan of the Spirit reveals the threads of our lives together, in and with God. The interweaving of Jesus' words and the convolution of the text suggests the pattern of a mandala or a web, something more intricate even than the warp and the woof. Let us listen to God's word.
From St. John's Gospel.
Here comes the word.
From St. John's Gospel. I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but for the ones who you have given me, because they are yours, and everything of mine is yours, and everything of yours is mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I will no longer be in the world, but they are in the world while I am coming to you. Holy One, keep them in your name that you have given me, so that they may be one just as we are. I pray not only for them, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, so that they may all be one, as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they may also be in us, that the world may believe that you sent me. And I have given them the glory you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, that they may be brought to perfection as one, that the world may know that you sent me, and that you loved me even as you loved them, even as you loved me. I made known to them your name, and I will make it known, that the love with which you loved me may be in them, and I in them.
As I walked through the woods one morning this fall, I came across a perfectly formed spider's web, bright with dew. The delicately woven strands reminded me that as we live and work, we spin out the thread of life that connects and supports us all. The web of support that joins me to my friends is like a lifeline. Sometimes I can almost feel it, tiny golden threads tying my heart to the hearts of others. My passion for life, for justice, fueled by theirs. These connections are often formed at gatherings of people of faith. It is there that I am able to laugh and cry, to speak the truth, to tell my story, and let another share my journey. Afterwards, my life is never the same. I am a porous being. There are spaces in my soul like the open places in a web. Other people pass through me. I am changed, and sometimes I am born again to a whole new way of being, of understanding myself, my work, and the world. The dreams we spin need to be tied to something. The spider's web I saw was attached to the graceful curve at the end of a wild blackberry cane. As we work together, we can create and maintain a web of connection that will support us all.
So I offer just a few ponderings from the reflection from God's word and the reflection from our word. Our vision leaps ahead in time to ponder what the future holds. Pondering on our role as Websters and spinsters. That means spinning, not spinsters in that other context. the Websters and spinsters of our future, pondering on our interconnectedness as we address the challenges of the charity charism. And hopefully, as I speak, some of your ponderings will go other places as well. You will also hear some repetition from what you have heard earlier this week, and that's a good thing. You know, weaving our web, the title that I used here, or the image that I used, weaving is not an act in which one creates. Weaving is an act in which one uncovers a pattern already there. We weave stories in our life, like the second reflection. Stories of our lives with the manifest works of our hands and our hearts, bringing the imaginable into the physical. Oops. Excuse me. I chose to focus on some of the challenges that we in the Vincentian family branches face as we embrace the reality of the present in a world which is moving forward with or without us. And as I ponder the composition of this gathering, I am aware we are culturally diverse, engaged in varied models of leadership. Our common bond is the Vincentian charism. Therefore, challenges will vary, and they will vary according to each group's unique circumstances. I shall suggest and share several challenges, challenges and threads, those threads like in a web, and invite you to reflect on them and ultimately to share insights. As we address our reality, we must honor our own experiences as members of a particular branch of the charism. For in the words of the Haitian proverb, we see from where we stand. Therefore, from where I stand, I will share. I will share some insights from my experiences, from my reading, and from my observations. And I ask you to do the same when you are in your groups. They may be threads that you already know. Nevertheless, let us begin to weave imaginatively. Weave out of the stuff that is already within us. Weave ways of embracing the current reality and imagining a different future. There are threads from each branch that can be connected and woven within the threads of other branches. You are aware that the past, present, and future are all parts of the same dynamic life. But the present alone is that which we can directly experience. We all experience change. Some changes are more significant than others. Change is our evolving way of life. We have been and will continue to live with uncertainty about the future of each branch. We are now in a sea of change, faced with complexity, new questions that flow from cultural, societal, and ecclesial spheres, or maybe I should say webs. as well as from our own communal and personal spheres. We are called to be leaders in a time of transition. We are called to be one of several branches that shares a common charism at a complex moment in history. This is our challenge. And might I add, it's also our blessing. Each of us as leaders is in an appropriate place, in the appropriate position, in the present moment, and that is the appropriate time. Therefore, whatever and whenever possible, we need to collaborate. We need to collaborate. We need to collaborate. One more time. We need to collaborate. Form partnerships, network, in order to enlarge and enrich ourselves and others. January 2020, and we are still unaware of the realities we will face in the coming months. Not to say the coming years, the coming months. They may be crises, trials, in our branch, in our church, in our society, tensions spoken and unspoken, internal and external, struggles of our members, struggles of those we serve. Additionally, we are unaware of the shifts of comic proportions in global, societal, and religious and environmental circles. These realities affect us, yet these are connective threads and cannot be ignored. We must reflect and question how to respond for the sake of mission, for the sake of the future of the charism. Could we creatively work together to design a web from the threads of the different branches? Could we? A web that is strong and flexible enough to embrace change, to enable us to identify what will and what will not change, to identify clearly the struggles that invite change. Yes, we could. Yes, we could. The question is, how? Excuse my hoarseness. The question is how. We realize we must honor the past, but we do not live in the past. We must ask what is remaining the same and what is growing. And while we encourage moving forward, we can expect anxiety and ambivalence. Now, as you reflect on where you are in the branch where you are, in your part of the world, ask yourself, are we challenged or are we challenging? There's a difference. So I'm going to ask you to name the current strengths of your branch. You don't have to do that right now, but you should do that. What are the strengths in the branch where you are? And how do you exemplify the Vincentian charism? Is the charism changing or evolving in your branch as you live it and serve? So I'm going to go into sections now, and each section will be followed by some questions. And the questions you can address in your small groups. Worldview. It is not possible to describe the world and what it expects of us but it is for us to reflect on how we choose to approach and respond to the world in which we live, to the culture in which we live. It is not solely about what we do. It is about mission, the why we do. The why we do. We do all in the name of Jesus. How can we critically approach our continually changing reality in which we live? Omurku writes that prophetic vision arises from imagination rather than from rational thinking. That is linear thought, suggesting that we must go beyond linear thought. The creation of new symbols and education in symbolism is a prophetic task. Without appropriate symbols, humans can neither dream nor imagine. Can neither dream nor imagine any depth that celebrates appropriately the ambiguities and the changes of life. And we are called to make the Vincentian charism viable and alive. So, how can we approach our continually changing reality in which we live and make the Vincentian charism alive and viable? Just where we are, just by what we are engaged in, by the mission to which we are called. So I just mentioned imagination. That's the second one. If vision arises from imagination, then one thing really required of us is an expansion of our imaginations. We must imagine other ways of living, acting, responding, and interacting. This is not fantasy. Imagination is a creative faculty. It is vital for life-giving. It is the capacity to embody the abstract in the concrete. Embody the abstract in the concrete, literally. It means to make an image of what previously existed as a concept. Make an image. Unlike fantasy, imagination is not about escaping reality. It is precisely about making things real. The key challenge may be to introduce ourselves to imagine new possibilities of our manner of interaction, of community, of collaboration, of connection. Imagine new possibilities. Imagine new ways in which the mission and charism may be fostered in new ways, in which God and we can connect, which God and we can interact. The call to expand the imagination is not an invitation to romanticism. It's not an invitation. It's real. To imagine new possibilities challenges us to ask questions, big questions, deep questions. Ask why questions, what questions, and not how questions. Do you imagine yourself or dream yourselves in a new way of being as we move forward? Do you? I guess I could say, can you? That's a challenge, perhaps. If we imagine the world of others sacramentally, then we must reverence the world and the other. If we imagine ourselves Eucharistically, then we must live as gift, self-gift. If we imagine the universe sacramentally, requires us to act differently within it and toward it. And if we live agapically, that requires us to discern what the true good is of the other and what we seek to bring about. This process of discernment is essential in conversation and dialogue with others. For our doing of the truth, our active reimagining of life is never a private matter. Never. Our imaginations can never be expanded alone. We need a circle of conversation partners who will expand our imaginations. The wider, the richer, the more varied and diverse the members of our circles may be, the more expansive our imaginations. If we include those not of our age, those, when I say our age, I mean your moment in time, those not of our culture and country, those not of our branches, our imaginations probably would be greater. So, I'm saying we need a circle of conversation partners who expand our imaginations. And how do we imagine or dream ourselves into a new way of being to move forward? Now, I've just talked about dialogue. I hope I keep this. I'm fine. We need a circle of conversation partners. I've just said that, to expand our imaginations. What does that imply? We are challenged to participate in conversation circles to imagine or dream our ways into new way of being, into new ways of serving, different ways of serving. So we need to talk to one another, not only for support and encouragement as we seek to serve others, but so that we can name our experiences as well and as fully as we can, so that we can draw deeper and truer connections, the material for weaving. Those connections are material for weaving. That enables us to know the truth of what we are doing. We are able to enable one another to weave something together. When I suggest we converse with one another, I mean that we need to engage in meaningful conversations. I don't know. I mean, we need to engage in meaningful conversations. Prior to conversing with other branches, we need to know where we are in our own. Margaret Wheatley, in her book, Turning to One Another, writes, "For conversations to take us into a deeper realm, we have to practice several new behaviors." All right, so these are principles, and I'm going to share them with you. First, stay curious about one another. Recognize that we need each other's help to become better listeners. Slow down so we have time to think and reflect. Remember, conversation is the natural way humans link together. Expect it to be messy at times. You've been in community meetings. Sometimes it gets messy, or committee meetings. And acknowledge one another as equals. This is not hierarchical. I close in this section quoting again from Wheatley because I can't sum it up better or more effectively. She says, ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Notice what you care about. Assume that others share your dreams. Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. Talk to people you know. Talk to people you don't know. Talk to people you never talk to. Be intrigued by the differences you hear and expect to be surprised. Oh, I'm not. Oh my goodness here. Oh, I didn't put that down, so ignore me. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. That's a good one. Treasure curiosity more than certainty. Invite everybody who cares to work on what's possible. Acknowledge that everyone is an expert at something. Everyone is something. Know that creative solutions come from new connections. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening always brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. And lastly, rely on human goodness. Stay together. Stay with it. Even when it gets messy, when you get tired, when you say, you know, he really got on my nerves, or she. I don't want to pick on any one group. Stay with them. This kind of interaction and support is essential if we are to imagine a future. Yes, time is going to go on whether we are with it or not. Do we want to be with it? Do we want to have an influence? That's what I'm saying here. If we are to imagine anything about our future, we have to interact with one another. We must assume that we are seeking God in contemplation to deepen the mystical life, that we are affirming and challenging each other in our conversation, and that we find ways of supporting one another in deep friendship, mutuality, and trust. Deep friendship, mutuality, and trust. All right. We are preparing ourselves not for the comfortable predictability of yesterday, but also for the realities of today and those unknown possibilities of tomorrow. That's what we're called to at this point. That's inevitable. We are on a journey, and the journey has many paths. We have to choose one. Or you can say, you can use the threads. And we have to realize that we can move and push the margins. And that those margins, and that we can generate relationships. So, what are the implications of those kind of statements? Preparing our ways for the unpredictability of yesterday. What does that mean to us? Those are things you have to decide. All the way through this, I have talked about challenges. And so this section is really kind of small because I will just say we're challenged, period. We live in a time of rare privilege, a time when there are new edges, new horizons, new possibilities. So what does that mean for us? Is it disintegration and collapse, or reintegration and awakening? Is it a time of dying or a time of rebirth? Or is it all of the above? So, I repeat, ask what's possible, not what's wrong. Name some new possibilities in each of your branches, in your branch area. What are the new possibilities there? What are the horizons that can broaden your vision? Where do you look? Do you stay at the bottom of your front toes, or do you look out to the horizon? Okay, the next is shifts. We are challenged by shifts. Shift from religion to spirituality. I'm not saying that has happened, but that's happening in our world around us. Shift in spirituality represented by feminism. Shift to acknowledge the web of interconnection among all that exists. A shift to immense diversity and cultural expressions. In the United States, about, I would say, maybe 15, maybe even 20 years ago, a sociologist and pollster named George Gallup declared, if the focus of the 20th century has been outer space, then the focus of the 21st century may well be inner space. What does that say for us who are addressing a charism? What is this inner space for us? This moment of change may be also a sacred moment for us, inviting us to new depths to explore that inner space. So, I'm saying, if that focus has been outer space, and the focus now could be inner space, what are the implications for us? What is that inner space? I think it's a good question. The implications. New ways of seeing. We are challenged, as I previously said, to see from where we stand. And then to see with new eyes. Proust, probably have heard this many times. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeing new lands, but in seeing with new eyes. And what kind of new eyes are we called for at this time? Einstein even said, no problem can be solved successfully by the same consciousness that created it. Our challenge is to open ourselves to a new way of seeing, not saying what we are doing or how we have been, but it moves us to a new consciousness, capable of responding to God's call now, in this millennium. The call is evolving and unfolding. It's moving. It's dynamic. Are we moving and dynamic, So, have we opened ourselves to new ways of being, of seeing, of doing, that foster and support this consciousness, capable of responding to God now? New paradigms. I think we have to remember that new paradigms are discovered while old paradigms are still active and successful. And the person who usually initiates a new paradigm is an outsider who usually is rejected initially. This is often because of our need to protect our investment in what is, in the way things are presently. So I began this afternoon with a story about the mother spider woman from the Native Americans. the one who brings all of life out of the stuff of herself. I remind you that all the stuff you need, you already have. You have the stuff to imagine, to think, to converse, to listen, and that comes from within. And that's individually as well as communally. The future comes from where we are right now. It materializes from the actions, values, and beliefs we are practicing now. We're creating a future every single day. I suppose I could even say by every breath we take. But we are creating a future every day by the what we choose, the way we choose. If we want a different future, we have to take the responsibility and be accountable for what we are doing right now in the present. If we want to have a change in the way we live the charism, we have to look at now. We can change direction from here. We can change direction from here. We can change direction from here. It requires contemplation. It requires critical thinking. It requires dialogue. We need to look prayerfully and thoughtfully at what's going on in each of our branches. And when we do that, we need to decide what we want to do about what we see. If it's nothing, that's fine. You made a decision. We're not looking for, we are not lacking solutions. What we may lack is the will to implement them. Or we may continually seek other kinds of solution. One more speaker, one more source that has a new insight, one more author. Our ingenuity is already within us. It's already provided solutions to some of the critical problems and challenges that you face. If we ask the questions about us, about our place. Now, I'm not implying that you don't get consultants or read more or have another speaker in who can't hardly talk. But what I'm saying is, and time will tell you when that's necessary. But what I'm trying to say is your internal insights, skills, and discernment are enough to move the group to decisions, to move the group forward. Does that make sense? To repeat, the future comes from where we are now. The future depends on how we thoughtfully look at the present. We have sufficient human capacity to pray, to think, to reflect, to care about one another, to act courageously, collaboratively, as we move toward the future. Moreover, a hopeful future is positive. A hopeful future is positive. We cannot get there alone. We cannot get there without each other. So, if we want a different future, we have to take the responsibility and be accountable for what we are doing in the present. It rests with us. Oh, then I ask, are we? The next is nesting and questing. You probably have heard this. The women religious probably have heard it. You have heard it, haven't you? I don't see any nods. Yes. We are challenged by the tendency of some of us to prefer nesting and questing. What do I mean by that? This is evidence that individuals who are members of the same groups or associations or vowed religious life obtain a high degree of satisfaction from membership in their group. In many instances, what holds them in the group is their commitment to the group. And that commitment is for personal satisfaction, personal need for affiliation, rather than their sense of communal purpose or mission. It is true. You see it in committees, not committees, but voluntary associations. Their need, their personal need for a sense of affiliation. The prediction from research is that groups will continue to decline if affiliative motivations are stronger than a concern for mission or the extension of the charism. If that isn't the strongest in a group, mission and the extension of charism in our groups, then we need to look at it. So again, I ask, I'm sorry. What motivates the members of your branch? Why are they there? We're challenged by diversity, by the increasing diversity that is, whether it's intercultural, interreligious, multilingual, you can name many others. If you're still a rather homogeneous group, potential members from diverse groups, those considered other, might find it difficult to join you, to even work with you. We have to move, I think, from being, we have to move from hospitality to developing the virtue of being the uncomfortable guest. In being welcomed into another's reality, we must let go of a good deal of our own biases, or let go of whatever ism we may hold. I won't go through them. Our hospitality will be within new contexts of ritual, new styles of gathering, new styles of counting time, new languages. But sometimes ritual is one of the hardest. This is the way we do things. This is the way we've always done things. This is the comfort level. So strength exists where there is unity in diversity. And that unity and diversity focuses on what each group has in common. And diversity can shatter the walls of prejudices and reveal richness of each tradition and perspectives. But we have to communicate with one another to know what those perspectives are, what those traditions are. This is an aside, interpreters. I was with a group a couple of years ago that had young sisters who went to this particular place to study. And they were living together. They're from different cultures, in Asia, in Africa, South America, so on. And the question was, what was most difficult? And I think those in the audience thought they would say, language. They said, no, it's the way they cooked the rice. Each culture had its own way of cooking rice. And then the food was that was difficult because that made them feel home, you know, and this one is putting some kind of spice in or something. But that's telling. That's telling. But they learned then to share and to taste the differences. In being welcomed into another's reality, one must go to a great deal of his or her, let go of a great deal of your own biases, whatever they are and whatever ism you may hold. And you have to do your own self-introspection to know that. And then if you're working or living with a group, you have to share it. You have to admit. Unquestioned assimilation. We're challenged by this. Your membership group is already established, and there are interwoven threads of influence that affect the behaviors in your group. Okay, what do I mean by that? The behavior, not only just the behavior, but also the thinking. How do we work together to shape and influence the future direction of this complexity? Unconsciously, sometimes, we address and relate to the dominant culture wherever we are. What is the dominant culture where you are? The dominant culture in which you live and serve. Thank you. I will slow down. I will drink water. Thank you, sisters. Okay, I was saying there are threads of influence that affect behavior. That said, we relate to the dominant culture where we live and serve. We are raised in a given culture. That's comfort. Yet when we are faced with pluralism, whether it's cultural or religious or whatever kind of pluralism, one of several phenomena coming from the processes of globalization. You get religious pluralism as well as religious and others. What's our response when we were faced with that? Is it you assimilate, you came here, okay, you learned to speak our language because you're here. You learned to eat our food because you're here. This is the way we act because you are here. As we are Vincentian in our work, in our serving others, particularly those that are unfortunate, how do we act? How should we act? Each group must be willing to enter the process of reading the social and cultural realities of the time where you are, and bring that reading and reflection to the scriptures. We must have the capacity to make intelligible and alive the gospel for the cultural world in which we live and serve. We must bring that. We must make contribution from our place of difference. If we are no different, then why are we doing what we're doing? We are doing it in the name of Jesus. We are keenly aware that we live in a world where there is hunger, but I am saying even more so, there is spiritual hunger. And perhaps it's even rampant, I don't know, but it's there. Failure to acknowledge the fact that there are distinct and unique groups and unique cultural characteristics can lead to unfortunate misunderstandings, difficulty, and sometimes an impossibility of engaging in deep dialogue because people have been alienated. On the other hand, it is an opportunity to demonstrate how different and how differences can exist in a context of harmony. And that can strengthen a group. There are interwoven threads of influence that affect behavior and thinking. What are these biases? When faced with them, how do you respond? How does your group respond? Does your group even acknowledge it? Enlivening hope. We're challenged to move from a prevailing attitude of survival and maintenance. That is, doing as much as possible with every single resource, even if it's a shrinking resource, to maintain the status quo. Primarily looking inward. And we're challenged then to move to an enlivening attitude and a method of intense hope, or immense hope. So, this is a period of change for greater flexibility in service of enlivening the mission, and not simply the maintenance of the mission in the branch as it has been served, has it been carried out. Among the key characteristics here, I would say a new realism, realizing there are limits to resources, limits to the resources available to carrying out the mission. This is not a return to the days of expansion. A spirit of communion, building on the positive and the proactive understanding of the common good, mutuality, and accountability. And transcending old polarities, moving beyond the discourse of duality, left, right, old, young, traditional, progressive, faithful, unfaithful. I could keep going on. Move out of that duality area of polarizing by emphasizing the importance of diversity and shared vision. Diversity and shared vision. So this requires members to think boldly and creatively about ways to live out all values of enlivening the mission and charism. Is this a realistic requirement for you? I don't know. Visibility. I say we are challenged to be visible. In a world saturated with symbols that promise everything, how are we a visible sign? What sort of sign can we be? Do we want to be? Should we be? Our visibility is not that of another logo or a brand name or a tattoo. The visibility we seek is more than just another smiling face on a billboard. So we have to assess our rituals and symbols that offer messages. What message do we promote or share or show by the symbols we have? And they should show how we live the charism and serve and connect with one another. The power of our presence comes from God and lies in the meaning of who we are and what we do. So how do we show that? What is the visibility there? Our world is aware of serious problems. They may be political, they may be within the church. I will just say, we, among others, as a viable and a visible group within the Catholic Church, are at times affected and perhaps identified and misunderstood because of the problems in the church. Such events mark an end of dreams, certain dreams. Dreams of renewal, dreams of a church that will be filled with vitality, equality, and dynamism. While the dreams may have been fading, we've been awakened to a harsher reality. And perhaps as a group in this church, we are challenged to make visible another sort of power and energy, which lies in the meaning of who we are and what we do. A collaborative power, the way we operate together. It is appropriate to question how the church might move forward from this painful moment in history, and perhaps we can question, do we have a role in this movement? What type of visible sign can we be? Do we want to be? Should we be? Making gospel values. Making gospel values. We are living in a time that points to great, intense, and unknown challenges. And it's important to stress that the most radical challenges for those of us in this family membership and in consecrated life are perhaps making the gospel values visible in a world today. So we can ask ourselves, what is our contribution in this socio-ecclesial moment? We're clear about coming together as members of the Vincentian family. We are here. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So we have the courage to free ourselves of everything that ties us down and paralyzes us, if we wish. At this time, we have an historical and spiritual responsibility. That is, to witness to our world today the making visible of gospel values. Moreover, what will that demand of us? This will demand courage, standing together, and hope. Courage, standing together, and hope. We must weave a web imaginatively in order to move beyond the incompleteness and distortions that are present socially, societally, and ecclesially. We have a gift, a precious gift, our charism, and we have that gift to share. Therefore, we must continue to dream, to ask, to reflect, and to share with one another the possibilities for a future of our charism. We must continue to bring voices, everyone's voices, all perspectives, all experiences into dialogue within the prevailing traditions of our branches. We're in the process of continuing to make history. Now, I'm going to do a little dualism here, but it's okay. When men talk about making history, they often speak of standing on the shoulders of others, standing on the shoulders of the giants of the past. You've heard that. All right. Women in various particularly the suffrage movement in England, understood themselves as standing shoulder to shoulder. Now picture the posture, the difference. It's telling in a way. Both, well, just picture it. So I'm going to challenge you to stand shoulder to shoulder. in relationship as you gather to imagine, to discern, to listen, to dialogue, to grapple with the challenges before you in your branch, and to strategize, to plan, to support, to respond, to instill confidence, to create, to hope, and to weave. That's all I ask. Do you have them all? It's pretty. So we are followers of Vincent. We, as followers of Vincent, strive to become transforming energy. The spirit that all in the church and the world need at this time. We need transforming energy. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, oh. 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 That came up and I go, what did I do? No, I don't want to go backwards, I want to go forward. No, okay, can I keep going?
Yes.
Here, okay. Okay. So, in closing, I hope this really, I haven't instilled lack of confidence as I stand here not knowing what I'm doing with this machine. In closing, I invite you to be deeply and prayerfully silent in your considerations, free in your interaction, daring in your sharing, loving in your confrontations as you challenge, and finally, accepting the choices you make that define your actions. Because it's for your future, for our future, the future of spreading and sharing the Vincentian charism. To move forward includes addressing the elements of atrophy, being participatory, inviting, welcoming, engaging, desiring harmony, fostering communion. And finally, we must ask ourselves, what must we as leaders do in order to be credible witnesses to the group we lead, as well as the future of the charism we exemplify? I say, we need qualities, organizational qualities, we need qualities of individuality, and we need the C's. The Catholic Christian values: clarity, compassion, connection, collaboration, community, certainty, curiosity, creativity, accepting the consequences in the end. And that is what I have to say before we close with prayer. So, if you would take your sheets that I asked you to take out. No, you're just taking your sheets out. These little sheets. Do you have them? So let's take a quiet moment before we pray. And let us pray. Together. O divine web weaver, we ask your blessing on our weaving, on the creativity, as we work together to design a web that will provide vision, witness, and energy for transformation. A web that will be strong and flexible enough to encourage others to build webs of their own design. Grant us eyes to see the whole. In the end, we ask for gentleness and acceptance of our less than perfect ways. May we see in our flaws places where our spirits can be free. We pray, we do, and what you would form patterns of mercy of the warp, this love throughout, and bless the weaving when it is done. Amen. Please stand. Louder, please. Louder, please.
With our hands, we press onward to the plow. Never turning back, we face the mystery far beyond. With our hands, we will shape each other's stories. We will write the vision down, never tire until it's done. With our hands, we will put our weapons down. We will care for the earth. We will speak a word of peace. With our hands, we will wash each other's feet. We will break the bread of justice. We will share the cup of dreams. With our hands, we'll reach out to one another. We will touch and heal each other. We will dry each other's tears. With our hands, we will work to build a promise, for our God will be our strength, and like the eagle we will fly.
I mentioned in our introduction to Sister Constance, please sit down. Siéntese usted. I mentioned that Sister Constance conducted research in Ghana, West Africa. And while there, she told me that she learned from the African religious tradition that they insist that people are always understood in the context of community, which we just observed again. She also learned that the quality of life of the individual depends upon the quality of life of the community. In Africa, I am because we are, and then the reverse is true. The quality of the life of the community is dependent upon the quality of the life of the individual in the community. We are because I am. Didn't we just experience that? Thank you. Thank you, Sister Constance. For reminding us that the groups who choose, the branches who choose to accept and practice this traditional belief will experience this phenomenon which we just experienced together. You challenged us again, as our panelists and our other speakers did, that if we want a hopeful future, we cannot get there alone. We cannot get there without each other, and we must collaborate. You challenged us after noon meals, in the middle of the afternoon, when it's siesta time, to live our Vincentian lives. And when this kind of environment that we just experienced is evident, the morale will be high in all of our branches, and our human and community spirits will be enlivened, and our charism will continue for another 400 plus years. We thank you.
All right, we're now going to take a break. At 5:15, I invite you to go back to your breakout group, 5:15, and have a conversation about what you have just heard until 6 o'clock, when you will return here for the final session. Break now. 5:15 breakout group, 6 o'clock back here. Thank you.